Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Are you selling gold at the price of gravel? In business, relationships, and even spiritual principles, one of the most overlooked truths is this: value increases as availability decreases. If something is too easy to access, too freely given, it becomes familiar, and familiarity breeds contempt, not because the thing isn't valuable, but because the perception of value has been damaged by overexposure. Think about the difference between tap water and spring water. Both hydrate, both come from natural sources, but one is everywhere and the other is bottled, branded, and protected. It's not always about the actual difference in composition. It's about the perceived scarcity and intentional presentation of the product. This principle is woven into every economic structure on the planet. Take diamonds. They aren't the rarest stones in existence, but their supply is controlled. They are not sitting in piles at your local grocery store. You can't grab one on your way to buy bread and milk. Their scarcity is managed so that their value is preserved. The less you see something, the more you believe it is special. This is not manipulation. It's wisdom. It's stewardship. Now let's bring that into your life. Your time, your energy, your insight. These are your diamonds. But if you're tossing them into every conversation, every group chat, every casual request, don't be surprised when people start treating you like tap water instead of bottled treasure. See, when you're always available, you condition others to believe that your presence costs them nothing, and what costs nothing is respected accordingly. Scarcity, when governed with discernment, is not selfishness. It is strategy. Even God doesn't give us everything all the time. He withholds things not to punish, but to develop trust, maturity, and understanding. In the same way, you must learn to control access to your gifts. You can be generous without being common. You can serve others without becoming their servant. The key is learning to say no to the wrong access so you can say yes to the right assignment. If you're always answering every call, every message, every invitation, you're not operating in purpose. You're operating in panic. You're hoping that by being present everywhere, you'll become indispensable. But the truth is, the most valuable people in any room are not the most accessible. They're the most aligned with purpose, aligned with vision, aligned with their own worth. Let me tell you what happens when you embrace this principle. Your time becomes more impactful because it's not diluted by distraction. Your words carry more weight because you're not speaking just to be heard. You're speaking when it counts. People begin to pause before they reach out, not because you're unkind, but because they know your involvement means something. Your name starts to mean something. You stop being an option and start being an opportunity. Think about luxury brands. They don't run discount sales every weekend. They don't send out coupons every Friday. Why? Because the moment you discount the access, you dilute the brand. Some of you need to stop discounting your brand. You are a walking enterprise of excellence, but you've allowed your availability to betray your value. When something is easy to get, it's easy to overlook. When something is rare, it becomes revered. Your challenge is not just to know your value, but to enforce the conditions that communicate it to others. You have to train people how to treat you, and that training begins with how you treat yourself. If you treat your time as sacred, others will learn to do the same. If you reserve your energy for meaningful pursuits, others will begin to recognize that your involvement carries weight, and that weight is your value. When you are constantly available to everyone, you unintentionally teach people to undervalue you. This isn't about pride, it's about principle. People naturally assign worth based on boundaries, and if you have none, you're not perceived as generous, you're perceived as common. Constant accessibility is not a badge of honor. It's a silent admission that your time, your expertise, and your presence are not in high demand. because if they were, you wouldn't be everywhere all the time. When you're always reachable, people assume you have nothing more important to do, and whether consciously or unconsciously, they begin to devalue you the very thing you are offering freely. Think about it. When someone knows they can text you at any time and get an instant response, they begin to take your attention for granted. If you jump on every call, attend every meeting, show up to every request without hesitation, you're not communicating excellence. You're broadcasting desperation. You are signaling that your time is not protected, and in turn, they treat it as though it holds no cost. But value is communicated through how you treat what's yours. If you treat your schedule like it's sacred, others begin to respect it. If you allow everyone to access you anytime they please, they will see no reason to filter their needs through your purpose. They'll treat you like a convenience store, open late, low standards, no sense of urgency or significance. People respect what they have to qualify for. When they have to think twice before reaching out to you, they do so with purpose. When they know you don't say yes to every opportunity, every phone call, every meeting, they begin to perceive that a yes from you carries weight. It has meaning, it is strategic, and that perception is not manipulation, it's management. You are managing your own value by placing it behind the appropriate filters. Not everyone should have front row access to your life, your mind, or your time. Some people should be in the balcony, some should only get the replay, and a select few should get the real-time conversation because they've demonstrated that they value what you carry. When you're always available, you lose the power of intentionality. Everything becomes reactive, every text turns into an interruption, every invitation becomes a distraction, and when you live in that constant state of reaction, you lose your creative edge, you lose your strategic focus. You become scattered, fragmented, and ineffective, not because you're not skilled, but because your skills are spread too thin to matter. Your potential isn't wasted by laziness, it's wasted by overexposure. You're giving away slices of yourself until there's nothing left for the thing you were actually created to do. If you want to move from being tolerated to being respected, you must reclaim your time. You must make your availability a privilege, not a default setting. People don't honor what they can always access. When you're always saying yes, always showing up, always on call, you become white noise, constantly heard, rarely valued. You become background support for someone else's story instead of the main character in your own. And here's what's tragic. Many people are not intentionally trying to disrespect you. They simply respond to how you've trained them. If you've trained them that you're always there, they will always expect you to be. And when you finally try to set boundaries, they will resist, not because they're malicious, but because you changed the rules without warning. That's not on them. That's on how you've positioned yourself. You see, your availability creates expectations. Those expectations shape experiences, and those experiences determine how people talk about you, rely on you, and value you. If you allow unlimited access, you will receive limited appreciation. This isn't a flaw in people. It's human nature. We're wired to elevate what costs us something. We cherish what we have to earn, and we discard what feels too easy to obtain. So when you are constantly accessible, you place yourself in a category where appreciation is optional. You've removed the friction that builds gratitude. You've removed the boundaries that define excellence. Exclusivity creates desire, and desire drives respect. When something is easily accessible, it loses its edge, its mystery, its perceived worth. People don't chase what's common, they chase what feels rare, what feels selective, what seems to require qualification. If everyone can have it, no one truly values it. That's not arrogance, it's a reflection of how human beings assess worth. This principle applies to everything from luxury goods to personal relationships to business consultations. People attach significance to the things they have to wait for, work for, and prepare themselves to receive. It's in the distance, the delay, the process of access where people begin to realize what something, or someone, is really worth. When you position yourself as available to all at all times, you put yourself in the same category as commodities. Commodities don't get negotiated with, they get used. But when you position yourself as exclusive, as someone who is strategic with time, deliberate with attention, and careful with who gets access, you automatically elevate your perceived value in the eyes of others. You become someone worth reaching, worth waiting for, worth preparing to engage with. People begin to respect your time not because you demand it, but because your posture enforces it. You are teaching people what you're worth by how difficult, or how easy, it is to interrupt you. When you walk into a room where everyone can demand your attention, you're no longer the authority, you're just part of the noise. But when you enter with intent, and people recognize that your time is measured, your words are chosen, and your presence isn't guaranteed, the dynamic shifts. People listen more closely, they speak more carefully, they engage with higher levels of attention. Why? Because they know this isn't just another moment. They're in the presence of someone who is not always present, and that alone makes the moment feel different. That energy of exclusivity doesn't make you less generous. It makes you more impactful. You're no longer filling space. You're shifting atmospheres. This is the same reason top-tier professionals don't attend every meeting they're invited to. It's the reason elite consultants don't take every client. It's the reason high-performance individuals schedule availability instead of living in constant interruption. They understand that their power doesn't just come from what they offer, but from the conditions under which it is offered. They have built an environment around themselves where people expect to wait, to prepare, to elevate themselves just to get in the room. Not because they're trying to be worshipped, but because they know their value increases as access becomes more intentional. Look at the things people long for, dream about, and are willing to invest in. Whether it's a limited edition release, a private mastermind, or a high-end experience, the pattern is always the same. Restriction breeds desire. People lean forward when they know something isn't promised. They listen harder when they know this moment won't repeat itself tomorrow. Your life, your voice, your mind should carry that same weight. But they can't if you're offering them at every opportunity without filter. You don't have to make people chase you, but you do need to make them consider what it takes to stand in your presence. Being exclusive doesn't mean being unavailable. It means being selective. It means being governed by purpose, not pressure. It means refusing to let urgency dictate your availability. It means deciding that your presence should feel like a privilege, not an assumption. Because when people start assuming they can have you anytime, they stop preparing to receive the best of you. They show up casually, they interact thoughtlessly, they treat your excellence like an option instead of a gift. And all of that could have been avoided if you'd simply made the decision to be available only to those who value your presence enough to approach it with intentionality, with honor, and with preparation. You cannot scale if you're always on call. Scaling requires structure, not chaos. It requires strategic thinking, not constant reaction. When you're always available to everyone, you trap yourself in the cycle of urgency, responding to whatever is loudest instead of what is most aligned. People think being busy means being productive, but busyness without direction is just a form of procrastination dressed in purpose. If you're always on the phone, always checking emails, always answering messages the moment they arrive, you're not building anything. You're babysitting distractions, and distraction is the enemy of multiplication. Scaling is about systems, leverage, and stewardship. It's about doing more with less, not less excellence, but less wasted energy. But when you're on call like a customer service rep for your own life, you give away the very thing you need to multiply, your focus. Focus is the seed of greatness, and if you're scattering it in every direction, you'll never give anything enough attention to grow. You can't grow a tree if you keep digging it up to plant it somewhere else every time someone calls your name. And that's exactly what happens when you allow your availability to override your assignment. When you study people who have scaled businesses, influence, and impact, you'll notice one consistent pattern. They control their access. They don't allow every voice, every request, every fire to become their emergency. They don't jump into action just because someone else feels urgency. They've learned that if everything is important, nothing is. You have to triage your life the same way a doctor does in an emergency room. Not every wound is critical. Not every voice requires a response. Not every need is your responsibility. And unless you learn to make those distinctions, you will always be exhausted, but never effective. Being on call creates the illusion of importance, but it leads to burnout and mediocrity. You become so entangled in maintaining the moment that you lose your ability to build for the future. You say yes to so many things that your real assignment gets buried under the rubble of other people's priorities. You lose momentum because you're stuck managing what should have been delegated, declined, or deleted. That's not stewardship, that's survival. You're not leading, you're just lasting. And that gap between effort and elevation will eventually create resentment, not results. Scaling requires boundaries because your time is the currency of your future. You cannot afford to spend it on things that don't produce return. Every moment you give to unqualified access is a withdrawal from your potential. Every distraction you entertain is a deposit into someone else's agenda. If you want to rise, you have to stop treating your time like it's endless. You must budget it like you would your money. You don't hand out cash to every person who asks. Why would you do that with your hours, your mental energy, your creative space? Those are your resources, and scaling is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons. If you're building something that matters, you have to stop answering every call. You have to stop living in your inbox. You have to stop making your calendar a free-for-all. Your destiny demands discipline. Your purpose requires precision. You can't master anything if you're always moving. And you certainly can't multiply anything if you're constantly interrupted. If you want to operate at a high level, you need to start guarding your time with the same intensity you guard your reputation. Because how you spend your time is how you spend your life. And if you're spending it on call for everything and everyone, you're never really present for what truly deserves you. Setting boundaries is not about being cold, it's about being clear. When you don't define what matters to you, people will define it for you, and when others define your priorities, they will always prioritize their convenience over your calling. Every time you say yes to something that is misaligned, you're saying no to something that's essential. The biggest threat to purpose is not laziness, it's distraction. Distractions often show up dressed as opportunities, but their real mission is to detour your energy, delay your progress, and dilute your focus. You were not created to be available to everything that calls your name. Just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important, and just because someone is asking doesn't mean you are assigned. You have to protect the lane you've been given, the mission that's been placed on your life. That means putting boundaries around your time, your energy, your peace, and your attention. If you're constantly letting people interrupt your flow, your focus, and your schedule, don't be surprised when you wake up 6 months from now exhausted and empty, having poured out in every direction except the one that leads to your own growth. Boundaries are the fences that protect the garden of your assignment. Without them, weeds of distraction grow freely. Without them, pests of comparison, approval addiction, and overcommitment sneak in and eat away at your fruitfulness. Saying no is not rude when it's in service of your purpose. Saying not now is not rejection when it's said with clarity and conviction. You're not turning people away. You're turning toward your divine responsibility. And the ones who truly understand your purpose will respect your limits, not resent them. When you lack boundaries, you train others to expect access they haven't earned. You unintentionally teach them that your time, your wisdom, and your effort are up for grabs. But when you move with intentionality and discipline, your actions speak louder than explanations. You begin to attract people who respect your time because they see that you respect it first. You begin to engage in conversations that are aligned with your future, not stuck in your past. You begin to filter your commitments through your calling, and that filter saves you from wasted energy and unfruitful connections. Boundaries don't limit your impact, they amplify it, because the more focused you are, the more effective you become. The more selective you are with your yes, the more powerful that yes becomes. You don't have to be everywhere to be influential. You just need to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with the right people. But you can't do that if you're overbooked, overcommitted, and overwhelmed. You can't hear divine instruction when you're constantly tuned into human demand. You can't steward your gifts if you're too exhausted from managing everyone else's expectations. Your peace is a signpost pointing to your purpose. Anything that consistently disrupts that peace is worth examining. Anything that pulls you out of alignment is worth pruning. The people who genuinely value you will honor your boundaries. They will adjust their approach, not demand your compromise. The people who push against your boundaries are often the ones who are benefiting from your lack of them. And when you finally step into alignment, not everyone will clap. But that's not your concern. Your concern is to protect what you're called to build. You don't need to explain your boundaries to everyone. You need to live them. Let your consistency do the talking. Let your results speak on your behalf. When you operate with clarity, your boundaries will become self-evident. And clarity is what separates the committed from the confused, the impactful from the busy, the intentional from the available. When your boundaries are rooted in purpose, they won't feel like walls. They'll feel like gates. Gates that open to the right things and close to the wrong ones. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate and how you position yourself. Every time you allow someone to interrupt your schedule without consequence, every time you say yes when your spirit is saying no, every time you bend your standards to avoid discomfort, you are sending a message. That message says, I am available for whatever you decide is important. And over time, people begin to believe it, not because they're trying to take advantage of you, but because you've trained them to expect it. You've modeled that your boundaries are flexible, your time is optional, and your value is negotiable. People respond to clarity. When you walk with a sense of identity and purpose, your behavior communicates it before your words ever do. Your posture tells people whether they can interrupt or must schedule, whether they should approach with honor or with assumption. And that posture is shaped not by what you say, but by how you live. If you're always available, always compromising, always adjusting, you're not just losing time, you're losing influence. Influence doesn't come from saying yes to everyone. It comes from showing people that you value yourself enough to protect your focus. Respect is not something you demand with your mouth. It's something you command with your standards, and standards are upheld through consistent actions, not occasional declarations. You can tell someone you value your time, but if you constantly respond to them in the middle of your creative work, you've just taught them that your words mean nothing. If you tell people that you're committed to your priorities, but you keep rearranging your schedule for last, last-minute requests. You've taught them that your priorities are suggestions, not convictions. People don't learn from what you say once. They learn from what you allow repeatedly. This applies to business, to relationships, to leadership, and to your personal growth. The way you handle access sets the tone for every environment you enter. If you walk into every situation trying to be liked, trying to please, trying to prove your worth by your availability, you end up being useful but not valued. You become a tool instead of a treasure. And when people see you as a tool, they only engage when they need something. They don't nurture the connection. They don't honor the relationship. They take what they need and move on, not out of malice, but because that's the pattern you set in motion. When you reposition yourself with clarity, everything starts to shift. Your no begins to mean something. Your yes becomes rare and therefore valuable. Your presence feels intentional rather than expected. And people note, even if they don't say it out loud, they begin to approach differently, they adjust their language, they respect your time, they prepare before they reach out, because now they understand that access to you is not automatic, it's a privilege. And privileges are protected, not exploited. Teaching people how to treat you also includes how you treat yourself. If you're constantly canceling on your own commitments, constantly ignoring your own needs, constantly overextending yourself to meet someone else's agenda, you're reinforcing a lie that you are less valuable than the demands placed on you. But when you show up for yourself with excellence, when you honor your own rest, when you commit to your schedule, your health, your peace, and your vision, you start setting a standard that others can feel. You begin to lead by example. Every time you choose intentionality over impulse, alignment over approval, stewardship over people pleasing, you're rewriting the script of how others engage with you. And that rewrite doesn't require confrontation. It requires consistency. You don't need to make grand speeches or cut people off to teach them how to value you. You just need to live in a way that demonstrates your value without apology. You need to create rhythms that honor your purpose, protect your energy, and elevate your presence. People can't treat you with more value than you treat yourself with. They are responding to the cues you've been sending all along.